Dear listener, I welcome you to this program, Personal Problem Solving and Decision Making. My name is Jime Nyende. I am passionate about studying the subject of personal problem solving and decision making from the Bible and sharing the lessons learned. You see, as you continue to live in this world, the number of personal problems you face keeps increasing. In order to cope, you need to keep ahead of the game by learning how to deal with any kind of personal problem. And therefore, the purpose of this program is to sharpen your personal problem solving skills. Our textbook is the Bible. Why do we use the Bible? All the personal problems you will ever encounter in your life have been documented in this Bible. And so I encourage you to have a copy and to read it regularly. Our topic for the day is emotions. Now, this topic is very, very broad. We shall focus on a small section, and that is negative emotions and how you can use them positively. To trigger our discussion today, we will begin by a simple reflection. I'm going to ask you a question, and I want you to quickly think of an answer. What do you do when you are greatly afraid and distressed? What do you do when you are in distress, in debt, and discontented? What do you do when your enemy distresses you? What do you do when a distressing spirit comes over you? What do you do when you are troubled, you are not at ease, and robbed of rest? What do you do when snares or traps are all around you? What do you do when you are in deep distress over the death of a loved one? Excuse me. Now, these questions are actually real stories of people that are documented in the Bible. I have read these stories and I have raised these questions after reading these stories. And so, how do you answer these questions? There is a gentleman by the names of Thomas Paine. He was a political activist and philosopher in the US. I quote, and his words summarize the answer to the questions. Paine said, "The real man smiles in trouble, gathers strength from distress, and grows brave by reflection." I like those words. Well, what negative emotions are you experiencing currently? Here is a list, a sample list, a representative list of some of the negative emotions you'll find described in the Bible. There's anger, annoyance, sadness, guilt, fear, anxiety, worry, apathy, disappointment, frustration, depression, despair, distress. The list goes on and on. The questions we are attempting to answer today: how are you supposed to smile in trouble? Remember, we are looking for how to use negative emotions positively. So that means when you sense a negative emotion, to use it positively, you must have a behavior that can be described as positive. Smiling is one of those positive behaviors. How are you supposed to do that? How are you supposed to gather strength from distress, one of the negative emotions? Well, our working definition, our hypothesis for the day, our rule of life to smile in trouble, to gather strength from distress, is to use negative emotions positively. Now, we want to dig a little deeper by asking another question. Why did God give us negative emotions? Why do we have negative emotions in life? Well, the statement is simple. Negative emotions are like alarms. They alert us of a problem. They are not the problem. You see, if we are to learn how to use negative emotions positively, we have to understand their purpose. What purpose do they serve in our lives? So one purpose is to look at your negative emotions as alarms. If you are living in a house fitted with a fire alarm or smoke detector, when this alarm goes off, you don't quickly silence it. You look for the cause. You look for the thing that triggered the alarm to go off. You address that thing, and then the alarm becomes silent. If you have a house or a car that is fitted with a burglar alarm, when the alarm goes off, it doesn't tell you that it has caught a criminal or a person trespassing. No, it simply tells you that it suspects there is one around. And so it asks you to investigate. It asks you for a specific action. So whenever you feel a negative emotion running in your life, it tells you that there is a personal problem. Usually this personal problem is spiritual in nature. Most of the times, negative emotions point not on physical problems. By physical problems, I mean problems that are tangible, problems that you can see, you can smell, you can hear, you can touch in that sense. No. Negative emotions primarily tell you that there is a spiritual problem that needs to be addressed. In other words, negative emotions should tell you that it is time to make a spiritual decision that will address a spiritual problem. Once the spiritual problem is addressed, you are now in a position to deal with the physical problem that is attached to that spiritual problem. So now, the question for you to reflect upon is, how do I respond when a negative emotion or when an alarm in my life goes off? Well, there are some rules we will have to lay down. When an alarm on a machine goes off, you respond to that alarm by quickly reading the manual. If you have read the manual before, it means you already know how to respond. So if you don't know, you read the manual. If you know, you respond in accordance with the manual. Now let us turn to the negative emotions. These are alarms in your body. How do you respond? Well, you have to go to the Bible to learn how to respond. If you have read the Bible and have learned how to respond, then that is fine. You have to exhibit that behavior. But if you haven't, which is the case with many of us, whenever you notice a negative emotion, quickly turn to the Bible and learn how to respond. The Bible lists the major negative emotions. I'm using the word major because it does not go into specifics. For example, if you look at websites of psychologists, you'll find that they have listed very many different kinds of fears, over 100 different kinds of fears. The Bible simply uses one word: fear. So go to the Bible, read the stories of good and bad responses to negative emotions. You will be prepared to respond to your body's alarms. However, the starting point is to write down the kind of negative emotions that you are currently experiencing. Because if you can give them a name, it will be easier for you to go to the Bible to learn how to respond. It is time now to look at an example. I'm choosing David. The Bible has so many other stories, so many other examples you can choose from. The question: did David face negative situations in his life? When you read the story of David from the Bible, you will find that his life was filled with very many troubles. Some of the troubles he caused himself. Other troubles were caused by people who misinterpreted him, who misunderstood him, who hated him, and all sorts of things. Each kind of trouble that David faced triggered a negative emotion in his life. Some of the negative emotions that David faced include fear, anxiety, depression, helplessness, despair, worry, and so many others. How did David respond? We will look at two verses. One is found in Psalm 64:1. He says, "Hear my voice, O God, in my meditation. Preserve my life from fear of the enemy." How did David respond? He raised his voice. He spoke out loudly. That is one response. He meditated. He prayed. These are some of the responses, but there is something very interesting about David. Whenever he faced negative emotions, he set rules to guide his behavior when he is facing negative emotions. And I want to bring to your attention one of the rules that David used in his life to guide his response to negative emotions. It is found in Psalms 56 verse 3. It says, "Whenever I am afraid, I will trust in you." Whenever I am afraid. In other words, the rule for David's life was, whenever I notice a negative emotion that is described as fear, I am going to respond to that negative emotion by trusting God. What lessons can we learn from David's life? These are my findings. Number one, negative emotions should trigger actions that are both emotional and logical. And I will explain those two words. Why emotion when I'm talking about negative emotions, and why logical. From what we have read about David, negative emotions should trigger trust in God. Now, trust in God is emotional. It is an emotion. It is a positive emotion. Why is it positive? Because it makes you feel safe to expose all your vulnerabilities to God. That feeling is positive. It makes us open up, and it opens up our fears so that we can address them. Trust in God is also logical. When you look around for where you can get help, when you are in trouble, you will have nowhere else except to run to God. So, there are many lessons from David. I focused only on one, that negative emotions should trigger actions that are both emotional and logical. By emotional in this case, I'm saying it's referring to positive emotions and positive actions of logic. And here, it is a trust in God. But it's not only David. There is another gentleman known as Jehoshaphat. His story is found in 2 Chronicles chapter 20, which you can read. I have picked out only one verse. It says, and Jehoshaphat feared. In other words, he experienced a negative emotion. How did he respond to that alarm? The Bible tells us he set himself to seek the Lord and proclaimed a fast throughout all Judah. Again, seeking the Lord is emotional. It is a positive emotion. It makes you to go where you feel safe, but it is also logical. You are looking for help out of trouble. He proclaimed a fast throughout Judah. And when you read that story, you have a lot to learn. I want to summarize. Negative emotions are the alarm systems. They are the alarms God set in your body to alert you of spiritual problems that need to be investigated. You have to engage in an investigation. In order to carry out this investigation well, you have to learn. You have to invest time by studying the Bible. And once you learn from the Bible how to use negative emotions, you have learned something very, very important in your life. You have learned how to smile in trouble. You have learned how to draw strength from distress. If there's anything you should forget, do not forget this, that your negative emotions should trigger strong positive emotions and logical actions like trust in God. Thank you so much for watching this video. I encourage you to check out other videos I have already posted, and very soon I'll publish another one. God bless you as you learn to use negative emotions in a positive way.